Well, joining me for our Thursday panel to discuss those issues and a few other things kicking around, Liberal MP for the Victorian seat of Goldstein, Tim Wilson. Welcome to you.
Thanks for having me.
And Labor MP for the Victorian seat as well of Jagga, Kate Thwaites. Welcome.
Hi, Matt.
Tim Wilson, if I could start with you and go to ASIO first. Peter Dutton has effectively dismissed Duncan Lewis there by saying that his resources are under strain because of this growing threat of foreign interference and espionage. You sit on the PJCIS, you know what the workload of the agency is. What's your interpretation of what Duncan Lewis had to say?
Well, firstly, I don't agree with your assessment of what the Minister said. What the Minister said is we're very mindful of the reality and the pressures that are on intelligence agencies, and particularly growing and expanding responsibilities, particularly related to foreign interference, and we've passed legislation around that. And as you've made the point, one of the problems we've had is dealing with the money that was cut out of it by the Labor Party when they were in government. We've provided funding, additional funding, and it continues to go up. And we'll continue to look through all of these proposals that come out as part of an ongoing assessment about our capacity of intelligence agencies. But we back them 100%. We want them to do their job, and that's why we're providing the resources to do so.
It's a pretty convenient argument to say that Labor took money out of the agencies when you have been, or not you personally, but the coalition has been in government now for some 6 years. You have had a period of time where you can put that money back in.
Definitely. That's why we have provided additional resources and funding, and that's, I mean, the brutal reality is that's part of the legacy, and it actually takes a long time to undo that legacy. But because we're running a strong budget surplus, and we're going to be in a position that will enable us to review these matters as part of the budget process next year.
So why would Duncan Lewis say that the agency is under pressure if the funding's adequate?
Well, there will always be pressure on these agencies because of the nature and the scale and the breadth of the challenges that we are facing. And they change regularly and they evolve regularly. And so he's rightly pointing out the challenges intelligence agencies have. It's good to bring it to the public attention, and what we've got to do is review it as part of ordinary government processes, budgetary as well as legislative, so that we can protect Australians, and that's what this government is doing.
Kate Thwaites, Peter Dutton says that every government agency or department is always wanting more cash in its coffers. It's their prerogative to do so. Christina Keneally, your Home Affairs spokeswoman, says that this should be ringing alarm bells within government ranks. Is Labor advocating for some sort of blank cheque to be written to our intelligence agencies here?
Of course we're not advocating for a blank cheque, but we are saying this is a serious warning from ASIO. They are saying they need extra money to do their job properly. Now, I sit in the House of Reps day after day and I hear this government ask itself questions about who can keep this country safe, and they tell us they're the ones who can keep this country safe. We're hearing from the Director General of ASIO that he does not have enough money to do what he thinks needs to be done to keep this country safe. The government needs to take that seriously. Instead, all they're doing is talking about Labor. They've been the government for 6 years. They need to get on with funding ASIO.
You heard some of Tim Wilson's criticism there that when Labor was in power, it was, according to the coalition, taking money out of our law enforcement agencies. How do you respond to that?
Well, what a cop-out. It's been 6 years. That's not an argument.
So is there any evidence beyond what Duncan Lewis is saying here that you have heard anecdotally, or at least the party has heard, that ASIO is struggling to do its job here?
Well, I think, again, the fact that the Director General put this in the annual report, a very public place, he's not hiding it. It is clear evidence that he's asking for extra support for the work that ASIO needs to do.
We'll move on to the issue of the drought, because of that is an ongoing concern to many people right around the country. Tim Wilson, you heard Joel Fitzgibbon there just before you came on saying that the government allowing farmers to come off the farm household allowance, come off that welfare payment, is an act of political bastardry. Is this new payment just window dressing when the coalition doesn't have a coherent drought policy?
Well, firstly, I don't accept that framing at all, and I think the bastardry is making politics out of a very serious drought and the livelihoods that are being impacted by it and the sustainability of our farming communities. One of the reasons why we're able to announce new payments today is because we've been running a strong budget position, managing the finances well, so we can actually help those people who need assistance. And that's the focus of the government as part of a $7 billion drought assistance and relief package. So we have farmers who confront challenges around investing in their business, particularly at a time when they're experiencing an extreme circumstance. We need them to be investing in those and being able to make their choices about their future. It's important for our food security. It's important for rural economies and, of course, the whole of the nation. And I think no matter whether people are in the city or in rural and regional areas, people are very mindful of that, and that's why we're taking it as seriously as we are, and that's why this politics is so disappointing.
How seriously are you taking it when you face criticism that the coalition is just putting forward these paltry payments rather than actually looking towards long-term planning, looking towards building resilience and actually dealing with climate change, which is the key driver as to why drought is happening?
Well, but this is just an absolute fiction that we're not doing this. I mean, I'm not sure if you saw on Sunday, the Prime Minister was standing right next to the Premier of New South Wales to announce commitments towards new dams being built in New South Wales. That's part of a resilience strategy. We have a comprehensive climate change policy being implemented right now as part of reinvesting in Snowy 2.0 so that we have more renewable energy into the grid, connecting more of the surplus energy from Tasmania, from hydroelectric power to the grid as part. We have national vehicle strategy. We have one around making sure that we reduce the emissions profile of Australian companies so they're competitive internationally. So we've actually got a full suite of measures to deal with resilience, helping people in the immediate sense around the challenge they face with the drought, resilience and trying to build the stock of the country, particularly around water management, because that's critical to Australia's future, and long-term policies being implemented right now about reducing our greenhouse gas footprint.
Kate Thwaites, Joel Fitzgibbon was quite passionate in his press conference earlier today, but the bottom line is the coalition can't make it rain. How much of Labor's criticism of their approach here is political point scoring as opposed to actually working in a cooperative fashion?
I think hiding behind suggesting that this is political point scoring to hide the fact that nothing's happened, that we've had 6 years, no dams built. We've had 6 years and people are still struggling. This is not Labor saying this. This is farmers, this is people in these communities saying they are struggling and they are not getting the help they need. Now, to hide behind and say this is just some kind of political argument, that's not the case. That's what Labor is hearing from people who are feeling this directly. And that's what Joel was reflecting. And he's been very upfront that we are happy to work with the government on this. We're happy to convene a task force to do what needs to be done. But really, again, I make the point, they're the government. It is up to them to get on with the job, and at the moment they're just not doing it.
Joel Fitzgibbon is effectively saying that farmers shouldn't go off welfare at all. They shouldn't go off this farm household allowance at all. Where does that money come from?
Well, again, it comes from the government making decisions about how it supports farmers into the long term. And that is a serious thing. This drought has been going on for a long time. You made the point about what is the government doing on the long term. And again, I make the point that we have climate change, we have emissions going up. So this isn't a government that is taking this challenge seriously, and it should be.
Can we just ask, you said that 4 years isn't long enough. Okay, so what, is 5 years long enough, 6 years long enough, 7 years? When does...
Are you suggesting that you just cut farmers off?
No, not at all. But what I'm saying is there's obviously a limitation.
What happens to them?
No, but I'm asking you. You say 4 years is fine. I'll accept that and say, do you think it should be longer? Tell me what's the time frame that you think it should be longer?
I'm saying we need to support farmers. Now, when are you saying you want to cut them off?
No. Well, that's why we announced today $13,500 for our families as well. Sorry, $13,000 for families and $7,500 for individuals to assist. But I can give a clear answer. Why can't you?
Because I'm asking you, when are you saying you want to cut farmers off? When are you saying that
we're not. So,
you're not supporting
them? But you're
them?
saying that you want benefits to go on in perpetuity. You're not
I'm saying we should support farmers.
Well, exactly.
You're the government, Tim. It's not my job to set a date for you.
And that's why we announced the funding today. But it would have been, if you're going to attack and criticise a comprehensive package to provide assistance and support to Australian farmers, which is what we're doing.
What we're hearing from farmers is it's not comprehensive. It's not what they think they need.
It's just empty words.
Okay, well, we might leave that one there because I know it is a very emotive topic that we are going to hear much more about. I do want to pick up on one thing that has moved within Labor's policy stance in the last few hours, and that is, of course, the fact that the party now seems to be warming towards these free trade agreements with Indonesia, Peru and Hong Kong. There are a series of bargaining positions that you are now putting forward to the government, but the hint does seem to be that even if the government doesn't move on things like labour market testing, on ISDS clauses, that Labor is going to support these positions. Is it just another policy area where Labor is going to back down in the same way it did on income tax, on national security legislation?
Absolutely not. So I think that the way you've just set this out shows you what a comprehensive and serious discussion Labor is having about this. And we want to make sure that these agreements deliver on what they should. They should deliver Australian jobs, and they should deliver the opportunity for our businesses to be able to invest in the countries that we're making trade agreements with.
It does seem to be putting you on a collision course with the union movement, though. The ETU in your home state of Victoria has already tweeted having a crack at Anthony Albanese for this shift in position.
We're working really closely and discussing with the union movement throughout this discussion about where our position is. So no, I don't think it's a collision course. I think we're very clear that we are standing up for jobs, and we will continue to be standing up for jobs, including through making sure that the way the government implements these agreements is focused on that.
Tim Wilson, we are running out of time, but I do want to ask you though, are you dismissing, is the Coalition dismissing the concerns that people would have that they might be undercut in the jobs market when these sort of free trade deals come through cheap labour coming in from countries like Indonesia?
Well, I don't accept that framing. I mean, the reality is with our free trade agreements, they're always focused primarily on increasing the amount and opportunities for our businesses to export into our target markets. So when you've got countries like Indonesia or markets like Hong Kong, we have the opportunity to increase the opportunities for jobs being created in Australia here. We have always been a nation where we have produced more than we have been able to consume directly. That's one of the reasons why we're one of the most prosperous nations in the world. And the more we grow our economy, the more we create the opportunity for jobs here, the more we're in a better position to grow the economy to the benefit of everybody.
Well, Tim Wilson and Kate Thwaites, we must release you back into the wild so you can make question time in time. We thank you both for joining us today.
Thanks.
Thank you.